Hello friends, welcome back to YouTube Book Club. Just want to make a note that starting today we are not going to be doing chapter by chapter anymore like I have in the past. It's now just going to be 15 to 20 minutes because all these chapters are really long and it's not the exception, it's the rule with this book apparently, is very long chapters. So rather than make extra long videos that nobody wants to watch, I'm just going to read 15-20 minutes and then end, and we will just pick back up on the next video. Alright, so in the last one, Ava and Henry went back to the Pavilion of Magic. Henry and Mr. Magister went off by themselves, and Ava was left by herself. And then when Henry came back, he was acting all weird and distant, I don't know, and it's making Ava wonder and worry, does he not like me or whatever. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Did her friendship not mean as much to him as his did to her? But just as soon as this question had arisen in her mind, the answer followed. Of course not. How could it? Henry had never been as alone as she'd been before they met. He'd never even been as alone as she was right now. But then again, was she really alone? At every turn, the pavilion seemed to be leaning in to suggest otherwise. Through the walls of the loom room, she heard someone playing slow, deliberate hymns on an ill-tuned piano, and later, passing through a long branching corridor, she thought she felt someone passing down an adjoining hallway. Thinking it was Henry, she went back for a closer look, but when she arrived, there was no one there. It was in the machine shop, though, its workbenches strewn with tools and gears, that the sense arose most distinctly. She was being watched. There was someone present, surely, just there, just over her left shoulder. Cato. Ava had no idea where this name had come from, but there it was, solid in her mind like a hefty stone at the bottom of a glass of water. She moved gently, just as she might have around a skittish horse, only allowing herself to turn her head very slowly, and gradually a distinct image began to resolve in the corner of her eye. A boy in a leather apron and round, shining spectacles. He was staring straight at her. Ava whipped around, terror in her heart. But there was no one there. On the bench at which the boy had stood, a small, dismembered cuckoo clock was laid out, its workings spread wide. Dust was thick upon the gears. Cato? Ava breathed. There was no answer. Ava left the room as quickly as she could without running, and as she went, she felt a kind of tickling whisper at the base of her skull, just below the hairline. Come back, it seemed to say. Please come back. Now Ava reversed direction, picking her way toward the more familiar precincts of the pavilion. Perhaps Henry was right. Perhaps there was something more seriously wrong here, and if there was, then Mr. Magister should know about it immediately. But before she managed to find him, Ava came upon another problem. Henry. He was in a little bedroom on an upper floor. Probably staff quarters, she thought, with a narrow bed, a low wooden table, and not much else. She was surprised at how quickly he had deteriorated, wild-eyed and worried. Even his hair seemed to have grown shaggier, and something at the back of Ava's mind wondered how long they had really been apart. Henry? She said, and he came straight across the room. I don't understand it, he said, as if they'd been in the middle of a conversation just a moment ago. I just don't understand. This is the picture. What? Said Ava, and in answer, Henry handed her his sketchbook. I can't see it, said Henry. I can't see it. Or maybe I see too much? Ava looked down at the mad tangle of charcoal and then up at Henry's bewildered face. Ava, I don't know what to do. There were tears in his eyes. Ava nodded. Stay here, she said, and I'll get Mr. Magister. But when she turned, he was already standing in the door, as if the mere mention of his name had brought him there. Ava had to stop herself from gasping at the sight of him, sweat-soaked and ruddy in an undershirt and trousers. Still, his spotless white gloves were still on his hands, and in them he carried a pair of round spectacles. "Henry," he said, and as he crossed the room, Ava thought she smelled something burning. "Here we are," he said, and bending low, he settled the spectacles gently on Henry's face and smoothed down his unruly hair. Henry blinked, squinted, turned his head right and left, to and fro. "Oh," he said. "Oh." Mr. Magister rose. "Better?" "Yes," said Henry. "Yes, I think so." "What happened?" said Ava. Mr. Magister sighed. "If the pavilion is an image, Ava, which in a certain sense it is, then the angle from which it is viewed is of paramount importance. A great amount of havoc can result if the perspective does not line up properly, and Henry's initial approach was, shall we say, unconventional." Gingerly, Henry crossed the floor and laid his hand on the bedroom wall, as if to assure himself that it was solid. "Now," said Mr. Magister, "if you'll excuse me," and, wincing, he strode from the room. "Wait," Ava said. "Wait!" So much was still unclear to her, so much uncertain. She clattered out into the hallway in pursuit of Mr. Magister, but he was already gone. One thing, perhaps only one thing, was clear to her. She had seen those shining spectacles before. They belonged to Cato. Chapter 6. Where There's Smoke. It was a long walk back, but Henry needed rest and quiet, and Ava knew where to find it. The parquet pond room. She slowed her step to let Henry take his time, and now and again he stopped to wander through his spectacles at an artifact anew. The bookcase eagle in the library, a sequence of tapestries depicting jousting knights and tailcoats. But even if they had clarified Henry's vision, these spectacles seemed to be causing new problems. He stopped often to rub at his temples, the charcoal on his fingers leaving dark smudges behind. Occasionally he had to take them off altogether, then blinked blearily as if he were surfacing from deep water in order to breathe. When they finally reached the banks of the pond, he sat and took the spectacles off again. They were in a room with no windows, but even so, a gentle breeze ambled through the reeds. "Ava," said Henry suddenly, "I don't think we should stay here anymore." "What? Why not?" Henry folded his glasses and rubbed at his eyes. "It's wrong. Something's wrong, and he knows it." "Who?" But Henry held up a hand. "Don't say his name." Ava was bewildered. There was no question that Mr. Magister behaved in a peculiar manner sometimes, but the pavilion, even magic itself, was often peculiar too. "You don't trust him?" Henry frowned. "I want to, very much, but I can't seem to make myself. I just need to get away from him, without him knowing, just for a little while, just to see." "But, Henry," she said, "he came to help you." "Maybe," said Henry, considering the folded glasses in his hand, "but these make me see less, not more, and I don't think that that's an accident." Henry frowned. "Can I look?" she said, and Henry passed the spectacles to her. Mrs. Blodgett had used a pair of reading glasses, and Ava remembered peering through them once, the way they'd rendered the world soft, fuzzy, big, like a smothering blanket. These glasses, however, did something very different indeed. The house itself seemed dimmed through their lenses, dulled, uninteresting. The walls and ceilings of the rooms were barely evident, but the lake, the cattails, and the reeds all glowed with a hidden internal light. Of everything in her field of vision, Henry was shining brightest, radiating waves of flame, and it was beautiful to see. But there was a growing ache in her head, as if someone were slowly pushing an infinite icicle up into her brain, and she pulled the spectacles off with a wince. Gently, Henry took them from her hand. "Yeah," she said, "I see." Henry nodded. Where are you going to go? I don't know, said Henry. Not far. And it might not be for good. It's just that there comes a time in any drawing where you've been looking so hard for so long that you just have to take a step back. It's the only way to see. Maybe Overstreet House? No, said Henry. It's too difficult to remember the pavilion once you leave the fairgrounds. But we'll find somewhere. Ava blinked. We? Henry was surprised, even hurt by this question. You're coming with me, aren't you? Ava's head shook back and forth. She couldn't imagine leaving, particularly not sneaking away. What if Mr. Magister found out? What if he barred her from re-entering? What if she never found her way back to the pavilion, to magic, to her parents? I don't think I can. Henry's eyebrows dropped. Why not? He said. He told you you were free to go and sleep at home, didn't he? This was true, he had. And yet now that the thought of really doing it came up, she wasn't at all sure that he meant it, or that she wanted to invite the consequences. Ava, said Henry, you can't possibly be telling me that you trust him. Ava swallowed. Well, I trust the magic, she said, and that was true. But Henry knew the difference. Ava, I'm sorry, she said. I just can't risk throwing it all away on a suspicion. Henry took a deep breath and slotted the spectacles back into his face. All right, he said. Then I'll go and find proof. Can you cover for me while I'm gone? I can try, said Ava. Henry nodded. I think I might have to use the lion's door to get out. Ava grimaced. That lion had wide eyes. Is there no other way? Well, said Henry, there is the front turnstile, but I haven't been able to get past the lions on the porch, and even if I did manage it, I'm not sure where I'd be. I haven't seen any other exterior doors. None of the windows on the ground level open, and the idea of trying to climb down from above frightens me. I have the feeling that you could start falling here and just never stop. This possibility was both horrifying and all too plausible. Idly, Ava put her hand into her pocket. Her fingers found the peach pit. Henry, she said, you're not going to leave me here, are you? For comfort, she closed her hand around the pit in her pocket, its keen edges pressing against her flesh. Of course not, said Henry. I'll come back. And at the sound of these words, the peach in Ava's pocket began to regrow. Henry knew he would have to ask the lion above the doorway to let him out, but Ava thought that they might be able to buy its discretion with a gift. Meet me in the long gallery, she said, and he was there when she arrived, sitting in a Dante-esque chair, spectacles off, head in his hands. Did you get it? He asked, and she nodded as she went by. Bring the chair. The lion peered down at them as they approached. A gift for you, said Ava, and it blinked and opened its mouth. Ava climbed up on the chair and pressed the squirming little music box racehorse, saddle and all, into the lion's mouth. It's not alive, is it? Said Henry. I don't think so, said Ava. Not really. But the snap and crackle of tiny bones filled the hall as the carven lion chewed. Please, she said when it was done, we'd like to see the fairgrounds. The lion stared for some time, looking from Ava to Henry and back again, but eventually it gave a demonstrative blink and the door creaked open. Henry stepped forward and pushed with his fingertips, swinging the door wide, and the bright sunlight over Jackson Park came streaming in. Oblivious fairgoers passed to and fro before the archway, and for a moment the elevated train came rumbling by, high above. Henry pulled the spectacles off his face, sighed, and walked through without another word. The door swung shut, wafting the aroma of the sun-baked path into the hall. Ava had missed that smell. Turning towards the stairs, she took the regrown peach from her pocket. It looked lovely, as ripe and colorful as ever, but when she bit into it, she found it mealy and dry. After the second bite, she chose to pull the remaining flesh from the pit with her fingers, discarding it into the wastebasket in a schoolroom full of vacant desks on the second floor. In later days, she would wonder if this had been a mistake. She passed by the open door of Cato's machine shop. Even now, she could not get his name out of her head like a catchy strain of a melody, but she didn't go inside. Not far from the top of the stairs, she found a door sitting ajar upon which someone had chalked the date, October 8th, 1871. Inside, the space of a ballroom was overhung with gloom, and in the dim above she could hear ticking. A great clockwork model of the night sky, stars, planets, galaxies, twinkled out, distant and near, all at the same time. Slowly, the arrangement of the stars inched forward, swirling, turning in imitation of the heavens above. She stood watching. However, they caught, stopped, and with a whir reversed their motions. Back and forth ran the great clockwork night. It was very beautiful, but the ticking clockwork made her think of the dusty gears and pinions in Cato's workshop, and besides, she could see what seemed like the light of the blazing sun burning bright from behind the floorboards. It was too close in here, too stuffy. She needed some air. Maybe she should go and sit on the porch. But Ava never reached the porch. Mr. Magister was in the library, and he called to her as she passed. "Ava," he said, "how is Henry faring?" The wooden eagle was perched on the back of a chair beside him, blinking intently. "Oh," said Ava, "he's much better, thank you." And this, she supposed, was true. Good. Mr. Magister was hard at work reorganizing his books, and even though he was not entirely well, he must have found an effective method of managing his pain. A large cut-glass pitcher sat on the table, its side beaded with condensation, and from time to time he poured himself a glass and drained it in one gulp. This seemed, at least, to minimize his discomfort. "I apologize," he said, "for leaving you unattended so long. The pavilion's imbalance has proved far more formidable than I first imagined, but I am hopeful that this may help relieve some of the ill effects." Here he gestured to the pile of unshelved books on the table before him. "The books are causing the problem?" said Ava. "Causing it?" said Mr. Magister. "Why, no. But there is more than one way to address an imbalance, and in matters of magic, the entire system must be taken into account, including the placement of every last book and paper." He frowned at the spine of the volume in his hand. "Thomas," he said to the eagle, "where is the grimoire of the angel Raziel?" With a sound like the creaking of great oaks, the wooden eagle spread his wings and flew across the library to a shelf by the fire. "Ah," said Mr. Magister, and after crossing the thick carpet, he placed his hand on the right. He placed the book in his hand first to the left of the grimoire, then to the right. "But tell me, Ava," he said, "have you not felt moved to try your hand at a bit of magic?" There was the peach, of course, but Mr. Magister had already seen her do that, and besides, its texture had been so disappointing last time. Ava felt her face redden. "Oh," she said, I suppose I wouldn't know what to do." "Have you not felt any invitation?" said Mr. Magister. "Truly? Has there been no way in which the pavilion has reached out for you?" Ava frowned. "Who is Cato, Mr. Magister?" At this, Mr. Magister flashed his gleaming white teeth. It might have been a smile if there had been any joy in it. "Ah," he said, "I shouldn't worry about him. A loose thread in the weave, nothing more. I imagine that all shall resolve once this imbalance has been corrected." This didn't seem right to Ava. She couldn't say for sure who or what Cato had been, but he certainly hadn't seemed like a loose thread. But, Mr. Magister, I'm afraid I really must concentrate on this task, said Mr. Magister. In the meantime, I advise you to not waste your time traveling down dead ends. Ava intended to object once again, but a call rang out in the entryway. Ava! She knew that voice. That voice belonged to Henry. I guess we'll finish there for today. Henry's back. He doesn't trust Mr. Magister, and if he's back, I feel like maybe he has found some kind of proof that he's untrustworthy. I too do not trust Mr. Magister. I've said that from the jump. I think he's a fae, or somehow, I don't know, draining the life out of the magic out of people to create this pavilion. I don't know. But there's something fishy going on. I agree completely with Henry, and I'm so interested to see what he has to say next time. All right, I will see you guys next time for another week of Come See the Fair.